My cousin falsely accused me of physical coercion. 10 years later, my family finally reached out to me. I grew up in what was probably an ordinary family. My parents worked a lot but always made time to care for me and my three older sisters. We weren't especially close as a family, but we didn't have major problems either. The same could be said for our extended relatives. They always lived a few hours away, but we'd see each other during summer or Christmas, and it was always cordial. As we grew older, we naturally drifted apart because everyone had their own lives. I'm 31 now, but when I was 22 and in university, my mum called me and that call changed my life. I remember not answering at first because I was playing with friends, but she immediately called back. In our family, there was an unspoken rule. If someone calls twice, it's serious, maybe even an emergency. So I apologized to my friends and answered. On the other end was chaos. People seemed to be arguing. When my mum realized I'd picked up, she went into another room and closed the door. I asked what was happening and heard her crying. The conversation is hazy in my memory, but she asked if I wanted to confess to something regarding my cousin. She was 7 years younger than me, 15 at the time. I hadn't seen her for several years. I simply said no and asked what she meant. Mum started sobbing even harder and accused me of doing something inappropriate to E when we were children. She said he had told my sister, who then told Mum and my aunt. According to them, when he was 9 and I was 16, she was playing in my room and I allegedly made unwanted contact and kissed her. Mum kept demanding I admit it, but I couldn't say a word. It was absurd. I thought it must be a horrible joke. The last thing I remember is telling her it wasn't true, that he was lying. But Mum kept pressing, saying he had described in detail exactly where and how it supposedly happened. She kept asking, "You did it, didn't you?" And each time I yelled, "No," it ended with Mum putting us on speakerphone and both she and Dad saying they didn't want anything to do with me anymore and that I should never contact them. Two of my sisters later texted me that I was disgusting, then blocked my number. I know it sounds strange, but after that call, I went into the shower and just stood under the water. I still don't know why I did that. When I calmed down, I tried calling and texting everyone, even E, but no one responded. Those who hadn't blocked me quickly did. The only reply I received was a message from my father asking me not to contact him, saying they needed time to heal. That was 9 years ago, and since then, I haven't spoken to anyone in my family. Saying it broke me is an understatement. I spent weeks in a fog, barely eating. This all happened right before my thesis defense, and I was already at my limit. Thankfully, my CO author noticed something was wrong and helped by taking over much of the exam, leaving me only the easiest questions. Without that, I definitely would have failed. Of course, no one from my family came to my graduation. Then began the worst period of my life. For the first year, I expected the police to show up at my door daily to arrest me for the accusations. I couldn't find a job and lived off my savings. I sang a lot and I became increasingly bitter and aggressive. The only reason I didn't hurt anyone was that no one was around. Once a neighbor called the police when I accidentally broke a glass, but I convinced them it was just an accident and they left since no one else was in the apartment. Instead of sleeping, I spent nights imagining how I could harm her without anyone ever finding out. I even thought about doing to her what she accused me of, only on a much larger scale. I know that's horrible and I'm not proud of it. A year later, I got my first real job in my field. That's when things started to improve. I focused entirely on work because it was the only thing that gave me a sense of normalcy, a way to immerse myself and forget everything else. Recovery was slow, but I drank less, smiled more, lived modestly, and earned good money. I treated myself with gifts like a VR headset, a motorcycle, Lego sets, and so on. Last year, I finally bought a small house and moved out of my tiny apartment. I had always dreamed of having a garage and a garden to tend, and having them gave me more strength. Now my life is more or less in order, but the problems persist. I've been on antidepressants for several years. While they help, they don't make me happy. They simply replace dark thoughts with emptiness. My faith in people has practically died. I tried dating, but over all these years, I've only been on 2 dates with 2 different women. It's incredibly hard to talk to anyone like a normal person when it comes to relationships. What am I supposed to say if a potential partner asks about my family? You know, They accused me of a terrible crime and we don't talk anymore, but I didn't do it. Honest, mostly I work with men, so the only woman I actually talk to regularly is my therapist and I really like her. A few days ago, I got a message from my mum. At first, I was scared to open it. I just stared at the notification for hours before finally looking. Yesterday, a second message arrived. In short, the first one said, "Hi, it's been so long since we last spoke. We miss you and want to know how you're doing." She wrote at length about my sisters, how my nieces and nephews have grown. I didn't even know I'd become an uncle, and ended with, "We love you and always will. Love, Mum and Dad." The second message said, "We understand you probably don't want to talk to us after everything that happened, but please hear us out. Last month, during a family gathering, he started downplaying what she said happened to her. It got so awkward that she finally admitted that nothing happened and maybe she dreamt it. We were all shocked. When we last spoke with you, we thought we were protecting her and doing the right thing. We know that doesn't excuse how we treated you. What he did was wrong, and we're all angry at her. We've called everyone who knew and told the truth. We all want to talk to you, and your sisters want you to meet them and their families. Please write if you can find it in your heart to forgive us. Love, Mum and Dad." That's the situation. I haven't replied yet, but they probably know I read it. Honestly, I'm furious. I don't want to forgive them, and I can't guarantee I won't explode if I'm in the same room with them. Part of me wants to call them and unleash all my anger, make them feel the weight of everything I went through, and then dedicate my life to making my cousin's life as miserable as possible. The other part of me wants to just ignore them and continue living my more or less normal life with my motorcycle and my garden, which keep me company. I have no friends. The only people I talk to are my co-workers, and we're not particularly close. I called my therapist, but she's on vacation for a few more weeks. I don't want to talk to anyone else. That leaves only you strangers on the internet. Please? What should I do? Ignore them and keep living as I am, or reply? And if I reply, what should I even say? I'm almost certain that meeting them in person any time soon would be a bad idea. I'm not sure my life would get better if I tried to restore those old connections. It's embarrassing to admit, but I dreamed of the day they'd apologize, imagining them falling to their knees, begging for forgiveness. Text apologies feel insanely weak compared to what they put me through. Consider yourself lucky that I didn't end up 6 feet under back then. My parents and sisters, that's one thing, but you. I will never forgive you for the irreparable damage you caused me. Burn in hell and never contact me again. She didn't reply, but I could see the message was read. Maybe she got the hint and decided not to answer. The good news is I also responded to my parents. Nothing harsh in the messages, because we discussed everything over the phone. It was weird to hear their voices again. I used to associate their voices with safety at home, but after everything, it felt completely different. At first, it hurt like hell. All the bitter memories of our last conversation came rushing back, the same voices, yelling at me for things I didn't even do. The call lasted about 3-4 hours. It was hard for me, and probably for them too, but it ended up being the most productive conversation I've ever had with them. I expected a lot of excuses like ease, but to my surprise, they not only apologized 1,000 times, they also acknowledged all their mistakes. They said they had felt awful all this time, and now that the truth was out, didn't know how to move forward. The hardest moment was when I asked why they hadn't believed me their own son instead of taking my niece's word. They said it had been unbelievably difficult. He had been so convincing that they felt they had no choice. I told them that, instead of completely cutting ties, they could have at least tried to help me, but they didn't give me a chance. They said they understood that and that it had been the hardest thing they'd ever done. A year or two after the break, they wanted to reach out and try to fix things, but ultimately decided that, knowing me, I wouldn't talk to them and it would just make things worse. That annoyed me a little. What difference did it make who I was? First and foremost, I'm your son, and that's what matters most. In the end, we agreed to stay in touch. I'm not visiting them yet, but it's a start. Despite the lingering anger in my heart, I feel that things can get better, and that gives me some satisfaction. Since that call, we've been talking regularly, and our conversations are slowly starting to feel like they used to. Maybe someday I'll visit them, but I don't know when or how it will go. How do you hug people who just threw you out of their lives? Final update, 5 months later, and this time I have more good news than bad. First, many people suggested I take you to court to hold her accountable. While I agree that what she did was unforgivable and terrible, I don't think it would achieve anything good. This dragged on for 10 years, and I just want it to end. Suing her would cost thousands in legal fees, which I can't afford, and I can't stop thinking that she never actually tried to take it to court herself. Not the best justification, I know, but the thought lingers. I'm still in touch with my parents, and believe it or not, I actually visited them about a week ago. They've also cut contact with E, and I think she's now experiencing what I went through, a sort of punishment similar to a court case. The visit went well. I haven't seen other relatives yet because I want the process to be gradual. With my parents, we met and had dinner. In the past, I wasn't sure how meeting them would go, how I could greet people who destroyed my normal life, but it went better than expected. I thought anger would overwhelm me, but instead I felt some relief when I saw them. It was strange. Maybe their presence restored a sense of normality. I didn't hug them until the conversation ended, which was heavy and intense. I didn't want to hurt them, but I needed them to understand how deeply they had hurt me. At one point, my mum started crying as I detailed the darkest moments of my life. They acknowledged that nothing could be changed, but they want the future to be more positive. They even invited me home for Christmas to meet the relatives, but I told them I plan to take things slowly and will consider their offer. Although I still feel conflicted, the hatred is gradually fading, and overall, I feel much better. I think the weight of this situation dragged me down for 10 years, and now, freed from judgment, it feels like a relief. I've also started dating a wonderful woman, and our relationship is gradually becoming more serious. Life is improving. Who knows what the next 10 years will bring, but for the first time in a long time, I feel like things are heading upward. To anyone who read my story, I hope my situation shows that any problem or conflict can eventually be resolved even if it takes 10 years.